Hi, welcome to the Flourish podcast with Dr. Tony Ingram, where you will hear straight from some of the best practitioners and leaders in wellness on how to take control of your family's physical, mental, and spiritual health, because we were all designed to flourish. All right, so folks, welcome again to the Flourish podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ingram, and today I am so pleased to have with me John James for what I hope will be the first of many conversations. John is a massage therapist, a master body worker, the owner of Ke Kino Massage School and Institute of Healing, and just an all-around really cool guy. He also happens to be married to Michelle Roughton James, owner of Wonderfully Made Wellness Sanctuary, which makes him one half of the Roughton James power couple. So John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you. Okay, so let's start out by tell me about Ke Kino. What does the name mean? Where did that name come from? And what do you guys do?
Well, first of all, Ke Kino is two words. So it's Ke, K-E, which means the.
Okay.
And Kino means body. It's Hawaiian.
The body.
So the original owners...
So I'm separating it now on my paper. I've been writing it wrong all this time.
The original owners went to open a massage school in Hawaii, and it didn't work out.
No way.
So they opened a Hawaiian named massage school in Plano, Texas.
That's funny. Oh my goodness, I love that.
So they got half of it.
So were they from Texas? Were they from Hawaii?
I don't know exactly where they're from, but I think they were local here.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. So that means you were not the original owner of Ke Kino. Tell me about kind of just a brief history. How did that happen?
Well, first of all, Ke Kino is 18 years old. I've been a body worker in Plano for 31 years. We were trying to scale a business that we had built called the C-Section Recovery Center.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we realized that the big breakdown we had was not just the money it would take to scale a business like that. It was like, where are we going to get the talent? Because it required a different level of therapist to work with that population.
We're not talking just a normal massage.
Right. And so what we realized in that conversation, through some accurate thinking, that what we really needed to do is get involved in education. And so we had a light bulb moment of why don't we just buy Ke Kino? And it wasn't for sale. So we went about a 1-year project of helping it to be sold to us.
So you wanted to do this thing with the C-Section Recovery Center. There weren't enough practitioners who had the level of expertise to do the things. So you're like, why don't we just create the practitioner?
Right, exactly.
Let's educate them.
Yeah.
That's so stinking cool.
It's a long haul. It's a long way to go about it, but it's a really good place to be.
So you're one of these people who don't take the easy way out.
No, that's definitely true.
Okay, awesome. So did it start so Ke Kino itself, we're going to talk about your career specifically here in just a second. Ke Kino itself, did it start as just the clinic or just the school, or was it always both?
It was always both. In the beginning, it was very different than what it is now. There's been chiropractors, acupuncturists, Ayurvedic health practitioners.
Oh, wow.
When I bought it 5 years ago, I felt like it should just be body workers.
Gotcha.
Because there had already been this kind of diminished belief in the value of body work or massage therapy, in my opinion. And so I wanted us to be really proud that we were body workers and massage therapists. And so we just very carefully and cautiously narrowed it down to just body work.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I know I get that question a lot when I am recommending or referring a patient to Ke Kino. One of the first questions that I get is, what is body work? Like, what does that mean? Why are you sending me to these people? What is body work? How is it different than massage?
Right. And so what I would say is that massage is a component that would sit under the name bodywork.
Okay.
And of course, this is bodyworker is not a formal name. It's just something that's kind of surfaced, like a pop culture kind of thing almost. And what I like about it is that if I'm a body worker, let's say I received the gift of using touch as a way to earn my living, and I go about trying to help people, then if I'm a massage therapist, then I'm just using massage techniques.
Right.
But as a body worker, I can create a lifelong practice of adding whatever to that would help the patient the most.
Okay, so you can include
I can
different methods.
Manual lymphatic drainage, myofascial release, visceral work, energy work. I can just go on and on. It never ends. And so the entire career is an opportunity under that name, in my opinion. It's an opportunity for me to just continue to add. Yeah. And it's one of the unique things about this profession is that it does have that ability for us to just keep adding.
I love it.
Yeah.
So one of the cool things that I'm learning about Ke Kino is that, so yes, you do all of these bodywork techniques, but you also have different clinics within Ke Kino. So could you just touch briefly on what those different clinics are and what they do?
Sure. We have 3 different clinics, and we started narrowing it down to clinics because we understand the value of being narrow. That it's hard. We don't want to try to be all things to all people. We don't think that's actually possible. And so it took us some time to narrow. We showed up when we first purchased it. We purchased it as the C-section recovery center, which was very narrow and very successful because of how narrow it was. And so from there, we took this company that was literally all of these different things, and we began the process of seeking some sort of narrow offer. And what it turned into was the corrective clinic, which is the practice of more orthopedic related corrections to the body, restoring posture, looking at where the body's picked up compensative patterns and correcting those using body work.
So you're fixing what's broken.
Yes. And that's like if an athlete were to come to us, they would come to that clinic.
Gotcha.
And then there's the family clinic. Oh, by the way, in the corrective clinic, there's also our pre and post surgical work, where we're preparing. Let's say someone's having a knee replacement, we're preparing them for that procedure.
Yeah.
And then there's our family clinic, which includes the C-section recovery center. It includes body work for babies. It includes body work for mothers and spouses, and then families, just families in general. I know I'm saying it's narrow and that it's this big thing, but it is as narrow as we could get it. And then our last project, that third space is always kind of held by a project that we're working on, and it's called Finding Zero, and it has to do with using body work to get accelerated access to zero. And imagine zero is just the least stressed you've ever been, and not just in your mind or in your environment, but literally in your body. And so it's using body work to cool off the autonomic nervous system.
And that's, I think, so I send patients to the other 2 clinics, but really, as a dentist, I think that's where I've probably sent the most patients to Ke Kino. Is they come in and their nervous system is up here. And I know they're going to have diminished outcomes to the care that I give because they're just so amped up and they just need to ratchet things down a notch. So there are some conversations that we have where, let's do some dental work, but please go to Ke Kino first.
Well, thank you for your referrals.
Please go. Please. Okay, awesome. So we've got the family clinic, the corrective clinic, and Finding Zero, which is maybe that's my low-key favorite. I don't know. It depends on the day.
That's your low-key favorite?
Yeah. Is the Finding Zero.
Right.
Because my husband spent the most time there.
Right.
Okay. So let's get into your work with moms and babies and go ahead and dig into how on earth you got started with all of this work that you do.
Well, let's see. With the C-Section Recovery Center, many years ago, I've been practicing 31 years. And so in the beginning of my second year, I had started treating trismus.
Okay.
Lockjaw.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I had a dentist in town that was referring these folks to me. And she had referred this lady to me that was the most locked I'd ever seen. She wasn't just locked. She was sitting in the lobby kind of rocking and shaking. And she was so locked up and hurting.
Yeah.
And I worked on her that day. I'd had a lot of success working with those folks, and I would work inside of their mouth.
Yeah.
And I would usually get them unlocked. No, I couldn't even get my hand in her mouth. That's how locked she was. And so she was about to leave, and that would have gone straight to surgery, by the way. So she was about to leave, and I started flipping through her chart and realized that she had had 3 C-sections, a hysterectomy, and a laparoscope. Laparoscopic surgery to remove adhesions. And I said, when did this start? And she went, it was right after the laparoscope. And so I had this kind of light bulb moment, and I didn't understand the correlation at the time, but I had this light bulb moment that maybe this is coming from her pelvis. Maybe those things are related, and I didn't even know how they were related at the time. Yeah. And so we started a process that day of working on the scar tissue in her lower pelvis. And at the end of that appointment, when I reached under her, she was face up, and I was working her lower abdominal scarring. Yeah. When I propped her thoracic spine open, like creating a little more openness, her mouth opened. And she never locked again. And so...
You gotta be kidding me.
No, and so that's...
but you had no idea that was gonna happen.
I didn't know she was gonna open. I was on a hunch. But I was also... That started me down a pretty good rabbit hole of what is the correlation? I started looking at how the hands are mirrors of each other, and then realized, wait a minute, the pelvis and the head is actually a mirror too. If I lean my head forward, my pelvis tilts forward, and if I lean it back, and so the rabbit hole then went to working with women, and particularly addressing that correlation between damage to the lower pelvis, the lower abdominal area, and how it was reflecting in other areas. So TMJ, vertigo, plantar fasciitis, like those are all being generated from a breakdown at the pelvis. And so that's kind of where it started. And so that eventually became the C-Section Recovery Center, where we worked specifically dealing with adhesions. And then we had another aha moment. And that's also what's cool about being body workers when you're practicing, is you have that happen. You don't have that. You don't find yourself having an aha moment with a book open. You find it when you have a patient. When you have it on your table, and you have these breakthroughs that happen. And so the breakthrough was that what we were dealing with, although adhesion release was important, what we were missing here was actually the birth wasn't complete regarding a C-section.
You mean from a...
Physiologically, that it was an incomplete biological process. That the birth started with conception and arguably would end with vaginal compression. Yeah. The baby would be pushed through this fantastically designed tunnel that would produce a therapeutic trip to resolving the birth. Producing the resolution, complete. Making the process complete. And so in realizing that what we were actually dealing with here was an incomplete biological process, that gave us enough information to then go down another rabbit hole and try to figure out if anybody else had figured this out. And the fact is they had.
Okay.
And so looking at other cultures like Peru and places like that, they have a lot of reverence for birthing, and they have a lot of processes to complete biological process, whether it's wound closing ceremonies or wrapping the belly or whatever.
Do they do a lot of C-sections in Peru?
No, they do. They do a lot in Brazil.
Okay.
A lot. I don't remember the number now. It's 70% or something.
Whoa.
It's crazy. I may be off. Don't quote me on that.
Okay, I won't quote you.
But so that's kind of how that's where our work began, with working with women.
Yeah.
And beginning to understand something maybe a little more involved than we had thought.
Yeah.
And then we started studying Dr. John Upledger's work, who's the modern day father of craniosacral therapy.
Yeah.
And in a book of his called Somato Emotional Release, he writes about this, which was so helpful to see that someone else had already found it and written about it.
Okay.
But he refers to it as when these things are left incomplete, that it leaves behind a retained biological frustration. And that rang a bell for us because that's exactly what we had noticed. And although that's kind of a peculiar way to word it, it was very fitting. And we went on as an institute, to define frustration as the inability to metabolize something. So what we realized we were dealing with is moms that they could not make sense of the birth that they had. They were incomplete.
You mean emotionally they couldn't make sense of it?
It could be physiological. I mean,
Yeah.
when women see us, they usually lose 5 pounds almost immediately because the metabolism starts working again.
Hold on now. I have not experienced that. Where's my 5 pounds?
Well, you
haven't seen you for
didn't ask
C-section
for that. You have to ask for the 5 pounds. No. But a lot of times women, if you had seen us right after your birth,
Yeah.
you were kind of if you were in a stall,
Yeah.
like you were kind of in that stall like a lot of women get in where
Yeah.
they're not losing.
Yeah, you kind
You
of
would have lost
plateau.
the 5 pounds.
I gotcha.
Yeah, it was more of the
No,
timing.
that totally makes
You were
sense.
already perfect by the time you got to us. So
I knew I liked you.
that's and so Dr. Upledger gave us some insight so that we
Yeah.
could share that with others. And so that's kind of how the whole thing came about, how we started working with moms and babies. Well, eventually babies got involved as well, because why wouldn't they be?
Yeah, yeah.
So
you work on mom and then you work on baby.
well, that's also something really unique about us, is that we don't ever work on baby first. And I don't know another clinic anywhere that does it that way.
Yeah,
And
if I go somewhere and say, here, please work on my baby, and then you make me hop on the table instead, I might raise an eyebrow.
Right, but
Maybe.
you think about it, I think we've underestimated the power that women hold.
Yeah,
I think we've devalued that as a culture.
yeah,
And in particular, how they can affect their children without touching them. Just
100%.
by being better.
100%.
And so one of the things we consistently see day in and day out is that we almost don't have to treat the kid at all. I mean, it's really close. Like we watch babies improve from across the room, where mom finally turns their head and says, I've never seen the baby so quiet.
Funny.
It's amazing. We've really misunderstood or the invisible connection between mom and baby.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
See,
It's like a secret power.
Experienced that with pediatric patients in the chair. You know, if there's a different demeanor when mom comes back with the kiddo versus another parent, or if kiddo comes back by themselves. But I never would have thought of it as being unsaid. Like if you're still experiencing that same type of connection, that same feeding off of each other, even in infants and newborn. Like how cool is that? It's not like they understand words that mom is saying, but they completely understand how mom feels and where mom is at that particular time.
It's likely all they have to
Yeah.
reference. When they go to reference something to answer the really unspoken question of, are they okay or not?
Yeah.
Because I say unspoken because they don't really have the question there, but there's this sense of a question that the child has as to whether or not they're in a place of safety, in a place of okayness.
Yeah.
And when they go to answer that, they reference that specifically to her, and they're only as good as she is. Mm-hmm. And so the real opportunity lies there. Right?
Yeah.
And I think anytime we can get our treatment reflective of reality, things go really well.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of times people are like, man, it's like magic. I'm like, it's really close to the way it really works. So it makes it look like magic.
It
Does that make
does.
sense?
Yeah. I might refer to what you do as magic voodoo stuff.
Well, and it's just at Ke Kino, we have a lot of magicians too. Like Ke Kino's there's 14 of us, so
yes.
So,
is that you need a sign outside your door that says something to the effect of master magician, head magician, something like that.
Yeah.
You need like a magic title.
Okay.
So.
I'll get on that. I don't think that'll go over well.
That would go over great. So walk me through, you're discovering all these cool things with moms and babies. At that point, do you decide, okay, I'm going to make moms and babies my entire practice, or you still are seeing everybody for all these different things? It's just you happen to have this one area that is specific for the newborn process. Right. Okay, cool.
Well, I don't just see moms and babies, but my practice looks a lot different than it did 5 years ago because we have Ke Kino now. We've moved a lot of people out of my practice, and when moms and babies come in, a lot of time they do end up on my schedule. Yeah. I'm not the only one seeing babies in our clinic, so there's 3 of us. Who are
the other 2?
Brigitte.
I love Brigitte.
And Grace Moore.
Yeah.
Brigitte is 40 years in practice, 43 or 44. Uh-huh. I'm 31. Grace is 35. So it's a really good trio.
You've been doing it for a little bit.
I've been doing it a little bit, but it's a good trio, the 3 of us.
Yeah. And
so they have things that they're really better at than I am. So it's nice. It's nice to have that around.
It's so cool to have, anytime you can have master practitioners that have their own little twist on things in their own area of expertise.
Yes.
And then you can all just feed off of each other and do lots of really cool stuff together.
Sure.
I love it. Okay, so with families and newborns, how are these families typically finding you, and what does the process look like now at Ke Kino?
Moms groups is probably the greatest referral.
Okay.
It's also the most dangerous thing to, those things could go south really quickly. But we've had really good luck there, and we really paid close attention to how moms and babies are doing, so we've done pretty well there.
Yeah.
But a lot of moms groups.
Okay.
We have practitioners referring to us, midwives, doulas, a lot of that right now. We also have a kind of open door policy, so any healthcare practitioner that makes a referral can always follow their referral. So like last week, I had 3 midwives follow patients to the facility. So they're in session with us.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's kind of cool.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool, and we usually just put them to work and get them to help.
That's awesome.
So also nurse practitioners, Wonderfully Made Wellness Sanctuary refers to us.
Yeah.
And a variety of other places.
Yeah. Very cool.
Dentist.
A couple of dentists are in there.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect segue. So as some of our clients and our friends know, it's maybe been a well-kept secret for a little bit. We've been doing some infant tongue tie releases together, John and I have, where you are prepping mom and baby with bodywork before the procedure, and then you actually come to my practice and guide me and my team with the release, which has been really cool. So if it's
fun, isn't it?
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. So for people who don't know, we'll dig into tongue ties just a little bit if you're not aware. So when we're talking about tongue ties, we're actually talking about any tethered oral tissue, and you'll see that terminology a lot referred to. TOTS is kind of the acronym that we use, and we're just talking about any time that there is fascia that is restricting movement of some of the body parts in the oral tissue. So it could be a tethered tongue where the lingual frenum, this little piece of tissue, is connecting the tongue too tightly to the floor of the mouth. It could be the upper lip, the lower lip. It could be the cheeks, what we refer to as buccal ties. And that can affect mom and baby several different ways. Primarily where we see that is difficulty breastfeeding and bottle feeding. If baby can't get tongue to lift up properly to the roof of the mouth, then they can't get a good latch on mom when they're trying to nurse. And it can not only make nursing less efficient and less effective, but it can make baby really frustrated and create a lot of pain for mom too. a lot of issues with mom. I can remember back, my oldest is 14, and we were taught nothing about this in dental school for some reason. I guess because I wasn't a pediatric resident, or maybe they just didn't teach it. I don't know. But I knew nothing about it. Had my first kiddo really soon after I graduated dental school, knew nothing. Didn't know she was tongue-tied until she was probably 5. So the first couple of months of her life, we were both just frustrated and crying a lot. There was a lot of crying in the Ingram household those first couple of months. It was really sad. But we made it through. And man, if I can help a couple of moms not have to go through that same process and go through that same physical pain and emotional pain. There's a lot of emotional pain when that happens.
Absolutely.
Especially with your first kiddo and you don't know what's going on. So I am happy to be able to be a part of the process where we can do a small, short little procedure to eliminate that restriction, to get them to be able to have a better nursing relationship again. And then dentally, when we're talking about dental development, oral health, growth and development, if they don't get that revised, then that can lead to different problems down the road. Like, yeah, we might get through infancy and maybe we can, suffer through some breastfeeding or switch to a bottle, but then there are still effects of that tie down the road where still, if the tongue can't elevate to the roof of the mouth like it should, then the tongue is not the strongest muscle like it should be that's impacting growth and development. And when the tongue is not the strongest muscle in the area, then the cheeks become the strongest muscle in the area. And when the cheeks are the strongest muscle, then everything grows much more narrow and much more constricted and can lead to allergies, sleep apnea, all kinds of this cascade of ill effects that can happen to kiddo as they grow into older kids and adults. Now I did these tongue tie releases for a little while at my old practice and then took a break when I moved up to the area and was not doing them for a while. And then just very recently we started doing them together, and I actually only do this is exclusive. I only do tongue tie releases with John as my guide. So John, I would like to hear your side of this story. Like, how did this whole thing start? And why are we working together? Why are we working together?
Well, one of the reasons we're working together is you're really easy to work with.
Likewise.
So it's really nice. So
Likewise.
first of all, the relationship is it's super helpful.
It's been a lot of fun.
It's great.
Yeah.
And it's not just you; it's also your staff, like the group. Like they've got a really good mojo together, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
it's really good.
They've got good vibes.
And that's I'll bring that up just because in a guided release, in a release that's involving body work, we take all of those things into consideration. That as a guide, if the room's not clear, then we're not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so you'll notice when I come into the procedures, I often ask, so how's everybody doing? Or I've already done a little bit of work to get everyone clear, making sure everybody's there. Yeah. And everybody's
now
doing
that
well.
Sounds like John James, super fun, woo woo. Like the room isn't clear. What exactly do you mean by
kind of like if you ever walked in? It just takes one person being in a bad place to alter the effect of something.
Yeah.
And so it also just takes one person to call it out for it to get removed.
Fixed.
It just doesn't take much.
Yeah.
A simple thing like, "Hey, Audra, are you okay?
Yeah.
You okay? What's going on?" Like, it just even that call to just become present for a moment. Or let's say that it's a pause and everybody prays for a moment. Mm-hmm. Just even that, like that, we understand the value of that, right?
Yeah.
And we so that's part of it. So as far as tongue tie releases and guiding those, that was kind of a COVID project. It was a dilemma we kind of kept running into, is that the releases were not being done in a way that worked very well. We kept getting babies and moms back, and they were really wrecked, like
Emotionally.
yeah, really bad. Not just emotionally, functionally.
Oh,
They
gotcha.
were having a hard time.
Yeah.
And so during COVID, Ke Kino got shut down for 90 days. So a dentist friend of mine and I started doing free frenectomies together for a while to try to figure it out. I contacted him, and we worked on that together, and I kind of got it figured out.
Yeah.
And I reached out to some key people and asked a lot of questions, and kind of began to look at what guiding would look like. And then I started guiding with a variety of different people. Yeah. And in doing so, we were able to kind of figure out what we needed to do to prepare a mother and a baby, so that when they walked in that day, baby was carried in, but when they came in that day, that
baby
the
didn't
only
walk in.
yeah, baby didn't walk in.
Except that one.
Except for that one, yeah. So that's true. So when they came in that day, that the only thing left to happen for that baby physiologically was to have a tongue tie release. Yeah. That everything else in that fascial line, everything else that was not working well in the baby's body was already gone, was already cleared. And then all my job becomes, at that point, is to position the baby in a way that provides for the best opportunity to have that release not only happen, but to leave the body. I always think of kind of like winding a garden hose really tight and then squeezing the spray nozzle to release all the pressure in the hose, and it's kind of what's happening. And sure, we want more mobility in the tongue, but it's really more about the release in the body. And you'll notice a lot of times when we release babies, they're completely out. It happens, right? It's pretty cool, right?
Stinking awesome.
And so
it's ridiculous.
I've gotten to where I'm chasing that at all times. I don't get it every time. It's a little precarious to get, but notice we're getting it more and more lately.
Yeah.
Because we're setting it up and figuring out how we might do that. And what we're talking about there is that at the end of the release, when the release happens, the baby literally falls asleep. Like there's some sort of profound release or relief has happened for the baby. And so we've gotten to where we're trying to make that happen, which we think we understand what that is. That's that release leaving the body. That's also the effect it has on the autonomic nervous system, and that we're getting the baby's just feeling better. And without the body work, we never saw that happen. We did not. We just did not see that happen. And now,
I can tell you 100%. The process is stressful, start to finish. Like from the moment mom calls, the process is stressful, start to finish. Yeah. And then this is obviously before doing it guided. Mom calls. Mom's nervous. She thinks that there's a tongue tie going on. Mom and baby come in. I look. Yeah, definitely tied. Mom can't nurse. Everybody's upset. It's a stressful situation. Do we laser this baby's mouth? Do we not laser this baby's mouth? We make the decision to do it. We would swaddle the baby, which my babies always liked it when I would swaddle them and put them to sleep, but goodness gracious, they did not like that when we would do it in the dental office. These mean strangers would take the baby and swaddle it. And even though we had the best of intentions, and a lot of times they still had better function afterwards, nothing about it felt good. And it was still stressful before. Mom was kind of a wreck emotionally during the procedure. Sometimes baby would nurse right away, and sometimes they were just far too upset to nurse right away. And then even afterwards, we're getting phone calls from moms like, okay, baby's in pain. Okay, baby needs this. Is this normal? And then from the very first time that you worked with us in our office, it was, for one, like, you've already talked to mom and baby. You've already worked on mom and baby. Everybody's just kind of chill. Like it takes it from a level 10 to like a level 5 right off the bat before we even start. And then you did, like, even changing the mood, the energy in the room right before we get started. You stop and ask my team, like, how's everybody doing? Yeah. How are we doing today? Is everybody okay? How was your weekend?
Yeah.
Like stuff like that, I noticed such a difference in not only how well babies function afterwards, but in how calm moms feel about the procedure. They just feel more at ease, more at peace about it, and how well babies do after. I'm literally seeing less relapse of symptoms in the way that we do it,
Yeah.
which is really stinking cool.
It is cool.
So stinking cool. So anyway, it's a really cool thing. I don't know what else to say. It's just really fun.
Well, had you always swaddled babies before we started?
100%. That's
Yeah.
what they teach
So
in all the
we kinda-
continuing education.
Yeah, they taught that in the education I had about it. I was working with a team that would let me play around with it. And I had this idea of that we've worked so hard to get this baby out of flexion.
Yeah.
And then we secure them like a straitjacket in flexion and lock up their autonomic nervous system and just all sorts of things. And the first time we did a release free, like completely, the baby's able to move, and I'm staying out of the way where the baby can move his or her feet and legs, and perhaps even deal with some of the stress physiologically rather than being compromised. We noticed a big difference. And I think I'm only bringing it up because I think it's important that we continue to allow for that kind of growth that's on the spot. And not wait for the next continuing education course to know what to do next. And what I like about this environment is that we can grow together, you know. And the baby and the mother obviously benefit from that.
Yeah, and I think the moms and babies grow together too.
Yeah.
Which is
Well, that's the other thing with we maybe have underestimated that moms are birthing an opportunity to heal. I know it's a baby, I got that.
Yeah.
But it's also a healing opportunity for most of them.
Yeah.
That they've got something they're trying to reconcile, whether they know it or not. And so us having a tongue tie release that doesn't interrupt that but adds to that is really important.
Yeah.
And so that they can begin to extract all of the learning and the growth and development for them and therefore for their families that they can get. I mean, that's what you and I sign up for, really.
Right.
Is to be there and to be some sort of kind of guide for them, not just through a release, but like we want them to have a stronger family. We want them imagine the just the benefit of the bond, a deep latch bond, and if we can get that alone for them,
huge.
In the cascade of developmental milestones that begin to spring from that, when we can get that for them, it's so important.
It changes the trajectory of that baby
Right.
and that family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So what are your thoughts? I know what my thoughts on it are. What do you feel like the benefits are of doing the procedure with you there as the guide versus not? You know, aside the fact that we don't have to swaddle if you're there, what are some other benefits of having it guided?
If I've already worked with the baby and the mother, then when when they get there, I'm already working with them again. So they've already been to Ke Kino.
Yeah.
At least once, but maybe 2 or 3 times sometimes, depending.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm able to prepare them once again. So that's one of the benefits of it. And then once that preparation happens in your office, I'm able to carry the baby, knowing everything I know about the fascial system of that baby, not from a book, but from me having worked on that baby, and carry the baby into the procedure room knowing all of that. And in that very moment in your office on that very day, we're able to position specifically related to what I know.
Yeah, you know
And
exactly
so-
what the baby
and
needs
so,
at that point.
It could be that I have one hand under their mid-spine and the other hand on the left chest, because I can see the fascial pattern is locked in a way that the release is more likely to happen if I can hold those areas down lightly.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the benefits.
Yeah.
We also clear the baby afterwards. So clear meaning soothe. It's probably a better way to put it. Soothe, and then we go in and we reunite baby and mother with soothing in mind. Yeah. So there might be some more work on mom then. And,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I've noted, I mean, it just makes my part of the procedure so much easier. Where I'm almost just an adjunct. I'm just the girl with the laser. Where we get, it's like a Goldilocks tongue tie release, because it's not too little, it's not too much, it's just the right amount and exactly what that baby needs at that point in time, to make sure that they have the best function after.
That's something else. Is if there's 7 things that are potentially released, which is true, right?
Yeah.
If there's 7, and there's only one right order, which is something I believe. I believe that the practitioner that gets the release in the right order, and making sure each release is complete before moving on to the next release, is the one that wins, so to speak. It's the best.
Because of that water hose scenario
kind of
that you're talking about?
You could say that there's really not the wrong thing to release, there's just the wrong order to release them in.
Yeah.
And so that's another part of the guide and the relationship that you and I have, that we can work together, work back and forth, and figure out, like, okay, we're going to start with the tongue, and then remember our last procedure, what did we do? We did something different, right? Do you remember? We went from tongue to the upper left buccal.
Yeah.
And we've never done that, have we?
No, never.
But you could feel it. You could feel that something wasn't, and when we did that, everything else changed. The entire mouth changed. And so what
and
that
the right
usually
buccal
does,
didn't even need it.
It didn't even need it.
After we
Whereas
did that.
if we'd gone to the lip, we may have ended up at the right buccal.
Yeah.
And confused is the word that comes to mind. It would have confused things. It would have been the wrong order.
Yeah.
And so that was great. That was great that we went from the tongue, we went to the left upper buccal, went to the upper lip, problem solved.
Yeah, which is not something that's even on my radar as a surgeon. That's not something I think about. I think of, what's the easiest spot to get to first.
Right.
And that's one thing that's been really cool, is just taking, yes, I'm revising the tongue tie with a laser, but it's going for a goal that's so much more than that.
Yeah.
That's been
so much more,
something new and cool for me to experience too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you're passionate about this work. It absolutely shows, and I just want to thank you, not only for making these patients a priority in your practice, but for what you've taught me as a practitioner as well. I know I'm a better practitioner and a better leader just because of the time that you've spent in my office.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
A lot of fun.
Feeling is mutual.
Okay. Now, believe it or not, I don't know that newborn care is even the coolest thing you do. I don't know. Maybe it is the coolest thing you do. What do you think is the coolest thing that you do? You really like the newborns, don't you?
I like rebirthing practices a lot.
Oh, yeah. Tell us a little bit about the rebirthing.
So what we realized is that if we have an incomplete biological process, a birth that's incomplete for whatever reason, could be forceps, could be it could be a C-section, or you could build a case pretty easily that all births are incomplete, that we weren't designed to complete them at vaginal delivery or C-section, that we were designed to complete over time. And I think
like that idea of the fourth trimester.
Fourth trimester, absolutely. And when I think of, and we look at other cultures, or I think just for me, and I think how did God make us, and were we made to wrap it up at the delivery and not need anything is not real likely.
Yeah.
That probably it was. I always think of it like an externalized nesting. If you think the very natural thing to do is to nest during the 9 months. And then after the fourth trimester, if we really let things be natural, we would be working to build a community. And that we would be finding ways to, and during that time period, to have help completing the delivery. And so one of the things we found is that we could get the baby to push again for a birth again. And we would do that by doing very light techniques to stretch or compress, and I use that word very lightly because people are like, compress babies, like, yeah, but very light.
Yeah.
And in compressing the drill tube, a lot of times you'll get a birthing push. You'll hear a baby, it has a specific sound.
Compressing the neural tube,
Yeah,
like on the
drill tube.
Oh,
So like just
tube.
tilting the cranial base forward just a smidge, and just a little bit of security at the lower sacrum, and allowing for those two hands to connect and just sit there and wait. And what happens is, boom, baby starts pushing. They usually has a grunt sound or a sputter, kind of, they'll sound like they're spitting almost. That's fascial tension coming out. And then what we do is we set mom's hands up, and set her hands up like this. We put baby's head in her hands, and we birth baby through her hands again. And so you're asking me like what I think the coolest thing is. That's really cool, because a rebirth in our office is an opportunity to rewrite the birth. Neurologically, it's rewriting. It's paradigm shifting even. And so when a mother after that visit goes back to reference her traumatic birth, they've often told us they can't remember it. They actually report amnesia, sort of. Do they know it happened a particular way the first time? Yeah, but they can't reference it in a way that they feel it as something negative. It's just a thing, which kind of brings me to another favorite thing. And that is that if the body is not holding the trauma, there is no trauma. We can't hold trauma in the mind alone.
It's in the cells.
This is my thinking, that it's in the tissue.
Yeah.
And so what we've got when trauma has happened, or and we're holding something as being traumatic, it is when I have a story about something that has found a place in the body to reference. And they're together. And so what's cool about body work and finding zero and those kinds of things that we do is that we're finding, through therapeutic dialogue, we're finding the spot in the body where they're holding that conversation. It could be me asking, how are you and your mother doing? Or it could be just anything that you're holding. And so that conversation begins to generate this awareness of a specific area where that trauma is being held, and then we get to remove that using body work completely. And what we find is people, once again, amnesia is a very common word used, that we're not asking them about that word. They're like, it's like it's amnesia, John. They'll say like, it's like it's gone.
Yeah.
And I like that.
You know what would be really cool is if you did some kind of study to look at cancer rates of your finding zero and your C-section recovery clients compared to the general population. Because I've had a lot of naturopaths say like the body keeps the score kind of principle. Like there's actual trauma is held in the cells. It's physiologically held. And a lot of people, especially in the holistic community, will say it's usually a trauma that will induce a cancer or induce cancer cells to become actual cancer, like an actual tumor.
Of course.
So how cool would that be?
That would be cool.
Do you have those numbers?
I do not. We have a lot of testimonies. You know, I'll be honest with you, we are an organization that has, I wouldn't say we've divorced the value of research, but we're very suspicious of it.
Yeah.
And so in doing so, we may have kind of harmed ourselves in some ways, like, because that's not an area that we focus in very much. Right. But I can see that, even just looking at trends, you know.
Yeah.
It would be really interesting to see, like, if because we do know about the autonomic nervous system, that if it's activated chronically and it's constantly in fight or flight, we know that all of those people get sick. We can study that. Yeah. That's already been done. We can look that up, and the Vegas study group on Facebook has got all of that. And if you're not on that Facebook group, it's legit. It's really
Vegas.
It's called the Vegas study group, like VAGUS, like Vegas nerve.
Oh, the nerve.
Yeah. And
not
so,
like the place.
no. And I'll give a plug for them. Really, really good.
In my notes.
Yeah.
Next on my list to study. That's really cool. Let's see. What all have we talked about? Goodness gracious, we've talked about so much. what other practitioners at Ke Kino are doing the Finding Zero clinic?
I think Finding Zero started with my own work and had to do with trauma release and stuff. A lot of our therapists, and so Finding Zero came to me just as a name, because I often naturally in my mind, like I start way out there in the future and work backwards, and sometimes it'll with like a name or a name of a book or like something that hasn't been written, probably never be written. But Finding Zero came to me, and so that's kind of a project that's important to me. However,
so that's the name of your next book, is what you're saying.
Maybe.
Note to self.
But the process of using body work to get someone somewhere, like zero, and think of zero like the least stressful you've ever known to be, or a quiet spot. Think of 10 being the most horrifically stressed you've ever been. Some people would even say, yeah, that time I was hospitalized. I'll hear stuff like that. Yeah. And so we have multiple therapists that are qualified to do that. Yeah. They're doing that in their own way and through their own training, or maybe they've done some training with me. We have really advanced therapists. So
yeah, you do.
We do. So there's multiple therapists that can help in that way. Even some of our very beginner therapists lately, we keep generating new students that are just really good at that work. And they have to have some sort of understanding of the autonomic nervous system. You have to have some idea of like, where does the vagus nerve innervate the diaphragm, and where does it come through the cranial area? Like
is that taught in massage school? Can you learn that in massage school? That's probably more advanced, right?
Yeah, but there's a lot of extended training. You can also just pick up a book and read, and the diagrams are easy to find, and so. But that's a lot. When I teach students in our clinic, I'm teaching them a lot about that, how to affect that system.
So I would assume that that Ke Kino students are far more qualified than just your average massage school student.
The state boards last year, 54%, I believe, don't quote me on this, but you could almost quote, I know it's close. Yeah. 54% passed. That means 54 out of 100 people that took the test passed it. 100% of our students passed it. Dude, and we're I think we're around 90%. We don't quite know yet. Yeah. We've had a couple of students fail the test this year, which is honestly, it's not that big a deal. It's you can retake it.
They just take it again.
So there's some students that have test anxiety, if you will. Yeah. But the state average supposedly this year is going to be under 50%. Like schools are really struggling getting students ready. Our school is a difficult school. It's rigorous. There's a lot of interacting between the clinic and the school. There's a lot of crossover. And then we have multiple programs where students fall into some sort of mentorship. Okay. One of them is something we would let most students in, and the other one is something they have to apply for, and we accept people and we decline people. And it's a little more rigorous. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
Oh, so cool. Well, is there anything we didn't get to? Anything you want to talk about that we haven't talked about?
I got one thing. I'm glad I didn't forget it. Okay. Body work. What is body work? We talked about that earlier, right? Yeah. But when you look online, if you look at the Texas Tongue Tie group, they're saying like, okay, so they'll be complaining. Someone will be talking about how it didn't go well. Okay. And someone will say, did you get body work? Yeah. And they'll say, yes, I got CST, which could be body work. Yeah. It could be. It could be a technique sufficient enough to cover what we're doing. Could be. Yeah. They would say, no, I got body work. I worked with a chiropractor. Mm-hmm. And it could be a chiropractor that has the time to do all of that. But I'll say in both of those cases, in our experience, it's better off to be someone that works along with those two people that can do multiple things. Mm-hmm. Or more importantly, that has time to identify the breakdown in the relationship between mother and baby.
I was about to say, because if they say, yes, baby got body work done, it doesn't mean that
we're properly,
mom got what she needed or that they were prepared to
100% of those cases that I can see, mother wasn't treated at all.
Yeah.
Or dad brings the baby for whatever reason. Like those, that, and we don't, you can't do that in our clinic. We don't work with someone that occasionally we'll have someone that can't work on mom no matter what. We refer them to someone else. Yeah. That's how important it is. And so the whole bodywork conversation, if bodywork is so important for preparing for a tongue tie release, which we believe that to be true, Do we also believe chiropractic care is really important? Yes, absolutely. Do we think craniosacral therapy is? Absolutely, absolutely. And most craniosacral therapists are doing other techniques as well, so we just don't know.
Yeah.
But body work kind of covers it all. Like, the main thing is that someone's able to evaluate fascial tension that's head to toe. You know, and because we know the deep front fascial plane goes from the tongue to the feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It diverges, I don't know if that's the right word, it turns and encompasses the diaphragm, and it's rather involved, right?
Yeah.
So any tension in that line is important, that tension is gone before that procedure is done. Because otherwise we're kind of leaving a kink in the line. So body work would be more like a fascial evaluation, a craniosacral work and evaluation, relationship work between mom and baby, optimizing the bond. And that's the other thing I'll add, is maybe the last thing here, is the more I work, I realize that a shallow latch is just a shallow, I got to word this right, I'll get in a lot of trouble. So a shallow latch is a non-optimal bond.
I agree. Yeah.
And so what I have tried, I've taken a couple of moms to talk to about this openly, so I could see if I was going to make moms mad.
Yeah.
And what I realize is that moms are always bonded at 100% of their capacity.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that, I'm like, that is one, even if the bond is 0, it's 100% of their capacity for whatever reason. Let's say severe postpartum depression or whatever. They're still at 100%. They're giving it their all. They're doing everything they can.
Yeah.
And the difference with body work is that the capacity changes. And so what we're watching is a baby meet the mother where the bond is. And so when they go to latch, they get out of the front of their mouth because they have this access to something deeper. And I also think, like, if you and Brian are mad at each other and he wants you to kiss him, like, you're going to, like, run in your mouth. Like, it's going to be super shallow.
Yeah.
And then so you could say in that instance that your capacity is compromised.
Yeah.
And so we wouldn't try to get you to get a deeper bond with him. We would try to change the capacity. Maybe a good conversation's in order. Maybe he needs to say, I'm sorry. Or, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Cool. Okay. Things I didn't think I would talk about. Kissing my husband.
He told me to bring it up. No, he didn't.
And you said he needed to apologize.
Yes, he needs to.
We have that recorded. All right, as we wrap up, I hope you got a glimpse of the breadth of what John does and just how amazing Ke Kino is. You guys are such an important presence in the community, and I'm honored to be able to chat with you a little bit more and give our audience a chance to hear from you. So we'll just close it there. Thank you so much, everybody who's listening or watching, and we will see you next time.